Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The App. This is our KTBS political podcast. The App has nothing to do with computers. It stands for Arklatex, People and Politics. We like to visit with all sorts of people on the political spectrum. And you can get the app wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on all KTBS digital platforms as well. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Melissa Flournoy. Let's go ahead and pop her up. And Melissa, you have a bunch of titles, so go ahead and tell us what you're involved in here.
Well, I'm grateful to be on with you, Jeff. I am from Shreveport originally. I actually represented Shreveport in the Louisiana legislature 30 years ago. I'm now the board chair of a group called 10,000 Women Louisiana. And we're a statewide advocacy group working on town halls across the state of Louisiana. And I'm excited to be with you today.
I understand you're also a part of a group called Indivisible North Louisiana?
Well, that's one of the partner groups for 10,000 Women. We're working with indivisible groups and different organizations in each region of the state to put on town hall meetings to get citizens involved in sharing their concerns. We did one in Ruston and one in Monroe with Indivisible of North Louisiana. We're doing one tonight on Thursday, May 14th at 6 o'clock with the Indivisible group in Shreveport and also the group with Indivisible North Louisiana. And it's going to be tonight at 6 o'clock at Grace Community United Methodist Church on Ellaby Road.
All right, so tell me about the organization itself, 10,000 Women of Louisiana, and the purpose and the types of things you like to accomplish.
Right. Well, we're about 3 years old. We started as a group of concerned citizens around the state that were involved in a number of different organizations around advocacy. And we decided to create a new organization because we did focus groups, frankly, Jeff, to listen to the interests and needs of women around the state for kids and families and neighborhoods and schools and healthcare. And the message that we kept hearing was that women are concerned that their kids are going to college out of state and not coming back. And so we really are focused at the state level primarily on issues that will improve the quality of life and also encourage our young professionals to want to live in Louisiana. And so it's an exciting group. We're active at the state capitol. We're active in different regions. And now we're working on federal policy issues, given so many of these cuts that are going to affect how services are delivered at the state level.
Well, yeah, I was reading some of the notes on your release, and it said a lot of your folks are concerned about Trump policies. Can you kind of delineate some of those?
Well, I think right now we're concerned about Mike Johnson policies because all of these issues are going through the Congress. And so we're doing town hall meetings to give citizens an opportunity to really talk about what their concerns are, what their fears are, what they're worried about. Because generally speaking, people need more transparency, more information. They want to know what's going on around cuts to Social Security, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to NOAA, cuts to higher ed, cuts to the Library of Congress, cuts to public broadcasting. And so there's a lot of need for more information. And so we're doing these town halls to listen to the voices of the voters and then to share that information back with our elected officials. So we're meeting with the staff members, the local district staff members of our elected members of Congress, both in the House and Senate. We've invited the elected officials and their staff people to come to these town halls. But we're doing the town halls really to listen to the voices of the voters because I think people are concerned and they want to share what they're worried about. And we want to help facilitate getting better information back out to the public.
Are a lot of folks worried about exactly what you said, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security? That seems to be kind of a hot button issue.
issues. The first two we've done in Ruston and Monroe, we had veterans come and talk about their concerns. We had parents of disabled children come and talk about their concerns to the elimination of the Department of Education and what it's going to mean for their kids that receive special ed services. We had folks talk about sort of their fears about their parents who are in nursing homes that are paid for by Medicaid, and if Medicaid is cut, what's the implications of that? We've had folks that are concerned about the weather service and hurricane tracking. I mean, frankly, Jeff, there's a lot to be concerned about, and these have been very interesting, thoughtful conversations of folks expressing really their fears and their genuine concerns about what's happening right now in terms of the services and the role of government and their trust in government.
What should the role of government be, Melissa?
Well, that's one of the age-old questions that has framed the political debate literally for probably 5,000 years. I personally think the role of government needs to facilitate, as the Constitution says, promote the common defense and the general welfare for the country. And so I think there is a social contract where the government does have a responsibility with a safety net, as well as to provide a good, sound, regulatory, pro-business environment to encourage our market economy to be successful, to grow jobs, and ultimately to help improve the quality of life of our citizens. And so, the real question that I think we're grappling with now is the rapid dismantling of important services that people have relied on the most strategic strategy to address these concerns? Because frankly, we're all concerned about waste, fraud, and abuse. We all want a government that's efficient. We want to spend our tax money wisely and efficiently. But we also want to be smart. And the question right now is, are we making decisions that are smart, that are effective, that are strategic, and that are going to maintain the quality and access to care that our seniors, that our disabled kids, that our elderly, that our veterans have relied on? And so our message is we really want to encourage our elected officials to be mindful of the impact of their decisions and what these decisions mean to the citizens that they represent. And that's really why the voices of voters is so important.
Now you said you had some Mike Johnson problems. Can you be a little more specific?
Well, no, I'm just saying that Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. Right now, the most critical issue is the budget reconciliation.
Right.
Our representative from Shreveport is the leader of the United States House of Representatives. He is the third most important elected official in the United States. He has control over the future direction of the country in terms of what our priorities are, what our values are, and how we spend our money. And so we're trying to encourage our elected officials not just to listen to a national dialogue coming from the White House, but also to protect the interest of their constituents at the local level. Mike Johnson's got about over 30%, I think, of his congressional district relies on Medicaid. We've got a very large senior population in his district that relies on Social Security. We have a huge veterans group from Barksdale to Fort Polk. So a lot of these decisions are not just made in the air. They are going to affect his constituents, our friends and neighbors, our church members, our people we go to school with, people we see at the grocery store, and they're going to affect each of us directly or indirectly. And so that's really the message, is to understand what you're doing as elected officials and the impact it has on the people you represent.
Do you feel like there has not been enough transparency coming out of the Speaker's office about many of these issues?
Yes, I think, this how the sausage is made often isn't very transparent, but part of the frustration I think you see in Louisiana as well as around the country is that you can't say, oh, we're not going to hurt anybody, we're not going to cut anything, we're not going to touch Social Security, we're not going to hurt kids, we're not going to cut Medicaid, and then you go behind closed doors and come up with decisions and a budget bill that looks like you're going to close Social Security offices, you're going to reduce access to services for children, you're going to eliminate Head Start, you're going to close services for veterans. You can't say no one's going to get hurt and then go hurt people without sort of owning the decisions you make. And so, Jeff, we do hope that there'll be more accountability and transparency and better explanations as we move forward through the budget process.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for our elected officials to hear the concerns of the voters and then to let them know what's really going on.
The speaker just, I think it was in the weekly leadership meeting yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, but he did address some of those issues again, and talking about I guess the thoughts that there would be cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and he said that I've heard him say this many times that that's just not going to happen. But you seem to be a little you may not quite believe that, huh?
Well, here's the deal. We won't know the deal till the deal is done. And it's very easy to say now, oh, everything's okay, everything's okay. But then when you look at some of the decisions that have been made in this first 100 days, the cuts to CDC, the cuts to the National Science Foundation, the cuts to higher ed, all of those cuts are right now affecting our universities around Louisiana. When you look at sort of the potential implications for these cuts, if some of the cuts that are being discussed, particularly around Medicaid, it's going to drive the number of folks that don't have access to health care up. It's actually going to destabilize our healthcare system because what I don't think a lot of folks understand is that all of our hospitals and doctors' offices and our entire healthcare system is really balanced on a foundation of funding that comes from the government through Medicaid and Medicare primarily, as well as private insurance. And so when you kick off one of those legs of the stool, it sort of jeopardizes or potentially jeopardizes that whole healthcare balance. And so there are real implications to the decisions that are being made in Washington right now. And we just want our elected officials to understand what their voters are concerned about, what the potential impacts are of these cuts, and to understand that their responsibility is to help protect the interest of their voters as well as the interest of the country. And so finding that right balance is really a difficult job.
And so that takes you to like the town hall that you'll be hosting tonight in Shreveport. You want to make sure that the people's voices are heard and that balance is attained, right?
Yes, and so we've done these now in Monroe and Ruston. We've had citizens come up and really it's a listening session if nothing else. We live stream the town hall on Facebook on 10,000 Women Louisiana's Facebook page. We do video interviews with some of the speakers and the audience members. We prepared a report for the first two town halls and have sent that to our elected officials that have summaries of the comments and the issues that people are concerned about. This really is about sharing information, giving people an opportunity to share their concerns. And frankly, they've been very encouraging events because I think folks have really gained a lot of, I don't know, if peace is the right word, but to look around and see that they're not the only people who are concerned about some of these issues. And so
Right.
I just want to encourage people to come out if they can put it on their calendar, 6 p.m. at Grace Community Methodist Church on Ellaby Road. We'll probably have time for about 20 to 25 speakers. We limit the speakers to 2 minutes. We encourage people to write down their concerns on postcards. We then provide that information back to the elected officials. We have invited the elected officials and their local staff people. I'm not sure who all will attend this evening. But I think we have heard from Congressman Fields that he's sending a staff person. And so I just think these are opportunities for citizens to be together, to learn from each other about what their concerns are, and then to try and communicate with their elected officials, either directly or indirectly, about how sort of how they're meeting this moment around meeting the needs of their voters.
Well, I think it's a great idea that you kind of summarize everything that goes on during the town hall meeting, then you send that information on to the elected officials. Otherwise, this would be in a vacuum. I guess they wouldn't know what was going on.
This really is, and that's really why we know these folks are busy. We know they're there in DC. That's why we're reaching out and doing meetings with their staff people. So far, I think they're really glad to hear from their voters.
Yeah.
We've got people calling the offices of their elected officials. We're encouraging people to share their concerns. I really believe that it's really important for folks to be in contact with their elected officials, to share their concerns, or otherwise they don't really know, how many of these decisions play out on the ground. What's the effect going to be at the VA in Shreveport? What's the effect to kids in special ed in Caddo and Bossier and Webster parishes? What's the impact going to be on rural hospitals and rural clinics? There's a lot at stake in this moment. And we really do think it's important for voters to express their concerns and to help facilitate that communication with elected officials.
Tell me about, you said you had town halls in Monroe and Ruston, is that right?
Yes, and then Shreveport is tonight, and then we're working on one in Baton Rouge after the legislative session is out. The legislature sort of sucks all the oxygen out of the air in Baton Rouge. So we're looking at doing the town hall in Baton Rouge, I think the third week of June. And then we're also looking to do another one in Metairie, and then possibly over in the Covington area this summer. So, we just really want to encourage citizens to be in connection with their elected federal officials. We want our senators to hear what's happening on the ground, and to recognize and frankly to respect the voices of voters.
Sure.
That really is what this is about.
Well, and you kind of approach this from I guess, a unique perspective. You were a former lawmaker, right?
Yeah, I've been in and around politics for the last 40 years practically, and so I really believe in citizen engagement. So I've worked in a number of organizations over the years that really have focused on trying to encourage and educate and energize people to pay attention, and to be involved and ultimately to vote. Our biggest challenge right now,
Sure.
Jeff, is people are losing trust in government.
Yeah.
The chaos is making them turn the TV off. Unfortunately, we have so much information coming at us. It's hard to know what's truthful and factual. And so our real
Yes.
message is about being informed, knowing the facts, making your own decisions, staying engaged, and understanding that voters matter, that voting matters, and that we have to protect the rights of individuals and families and neighborhoods and communities, and in communication with our elected officials.
I'll say, look, I'm an anchor here, but politics is my beat, and so I'm into it every day. But I'm just like you said, I just want to get away from it sometimes. It's just too much, it's become you really don't know what to believe, right?
Well, Jeff, and it's also gotten kind of mean.
Yeah.
I mean, when I got into politics years ago, Republicans and Democrats in the legislature, we were all friends. We went out to eat together. Our families socialized together. There was more of a sense of the common good.
Hmm.
And I'm just very, very concerned that we frame politics in terms of chaos and conflict. And what we're really trying to do is to reframe the discussion around community, around solutions, around listening to the concerns of real people. Because we've got to tone down the shouting and we've got to look at
Yeah.
what we agree on and how to solve problems and move the country forward.
I
And so,
I agree
so
with you.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
That's the challenge in a moment of chaos and confrontation. And frankly, I've never seen politics like this. You've got
No.
so many people are so opinionated and polarized that we can't take a deep breath and hear each other.
Oh, I agree.
And so that's really what we're trying to do is to create a community opportunity that is we called it nonpartisan and non-denominational because these really are very informative, calm conversations around listening to people's concerns. And if we start from that baseline, then I think we can work together to sort of come back and sort of try to change our politics to be more focused on solutions.
Well, I think that's quite admirable. And how do you think that our politics got to be the way it is now? You're right. It's mean. It's mean spirited now.
I think there's really too much money in politics in terms of campaigns and dark money interest groups and all of that. I really wish we could go back to a day where uh, people ran by asking for their votes of their friends and neighbors to believe that they were good people to represent the community. And I think the advertising and the political consultants and the tear each other down negative advertising works. And that's why we have so much of it.
Yeah.
But I really wish we could come back around to focusing on what kind of communities do we want to live in? What kind of country do we want to live in? How do we live in these communities together? How do we move across some of these fault lines of race and class and division and frankly, partisanship, and tone it down? I think
Yeah.
we've got to really tone it down. And so I actually think Speaker Mike Johnson has an amazing opportunity for leadership, and that he has an amazing opportunity because he's a very calm guy.
He is.
Okay. And everybody who knows him seems to love him. I don't know him, but he's got an opportunity for leadership to be truthful, to be transparent, to be clear, to articulate sort of what's really going on in a way that people can hear it. And so that's really our message is that the voters matter. We need to hear each other. We need to understand the different perspectives of folks across the ideological spectrum. And ultimately, we need to get back to respect because at the end of the day, we need to respect our elected officials, but they need to be worthy of our respect.
And
And I think that's the
they need to
crisis of
respect
the
us
moment.
too, right? I mean, I agree with that, but they need to respect us too, right?
And that's really the reason we're doing this, Jeff, is that, it's voters matter. And one of the things that scares me about Louisiana, if you look at the trend lines, is that fewer and fewer people are going out to vote in elections. We've had special elections around the state where the turnout has just been dismal. In the governor's election 2 years ago, the turnout was just pitiful. Governor Landry won in the primary, but only 40% of the people got out and voted.
Yeah.
And so we've had special elections where less than 20% of people have gotten out to elect. And that's because the voters don't think their voices matter. And so we really are looking at sort of a grassroots, community-based effort to respect the voices of voters. I can't say that often enough, and to encourage people to come out and voice their concerns or tell their stories. Because frankly, I think a lot of people don't understand what government does and don't understand the implications of eliminating the Department of Education, or don't understand what's going to happen to LSU Med School if we eliminate funding through NIH or the National Science Foundation or CDC. What's going to happen to, Tech and ULM and LSUS if we, lose federal funding for students to be able to go to college. And I think the long-term implications are really quite disastrous and dramatic.
Yeah.
And then the other part is, they want to eliminate FEMA. I grew up in Shreveport, but I live in Baton Rouge. I've worked hurricanes and we're in the nonprofit sector for the last 30 years. And, frankly, the state of Louisiana is a poor state. We can't handle the impact of tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods without federal assistance. Some of these decisions just don't make sense for Louisiana. And our congressional officers and elected officials need to understand how this is going to affect all of us.
We're just about to the end of our time here, but I want to ask you this one or two last questions here.
Sure.
You mentioned about the turnout in elections in Louisiana. This is my opinion. I'm not from Louisiana originally. I've been here about 10 years now. There's just way too many elections in Louisiana, I think, don't you?
Oh, amen. And that's on purpose. What we've done over the years in the legislature is keep adding elections because, frankly, local elections, DA taxes, school taxes, library taxes, over the years we created special elections for all these little tiny things with the expectation that only the people who care about those issues will show up to vote. And so, we've done this to ourselves. Jeff, I think you hit the nail on the head. We need to consolidate elections. Yeah. We need to have fewer elections. We need to have all elections on the same days statewide. I personally think the Secretary of State's office ought to be promoting and publicizing the dates of elections more. We've got a very safe voting system here in Louisiana. Right. We have never had in the modern era, in the last 30 years, I guess, frankly, since Fox McKithen was the Secretary of State, we have very safe elections. We've got voter ID laws. Our elections matter. We should have better elections, fewer elections, and higher turnout.
Right.
And really encourage citizens to be informed and engaged and participate.
Yes.
Because elections do matter and these decisions do have consequences.
I agree 100%. All right, one last plug for your event in Shreveport tonight.
Well, it's Thursday night tonight at the Grace Community United Methodist Church, 9400 Ellaby Road. It's from 6 to 8. I think we've got almost 200 people registered. Our capacity is about 300, 350, so more people can come. And it's a very thoughtful, respectful community meeting where people can share their concerns. Excellent. And so our goal, I think, is to create opportunities for citizens to hear each other, to listen to each other, to respect each other, and to understand what's at stake.
Oh, that's fantastic. Look, I've enjoyed this conversation. It's been fascinating. Can we do it another one sometime?
Absolutely, Jeff. I'd be happy to. And thank you for your political coverage. We live in uncertain and dangerous times, and people of goodwill across the political spectrum need to come together.
All right.
And that's really our message.
All right. Melissa Flournoy from 10,000 Women of Louisiana, their town hall tonight from 6 to 8 in Shreveport. Melissa, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
All right. Thank you for watching, too. This has been the app, Arklatex People in Politics. You can catch it on all major podcast platforms and on all KTBS digital platforms as well. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, everybody.